Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program will begin shortly. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, could you please take your seats and turn off your mobile phones? The program will start in 1 minute. Please take your seats. Your Highness, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to this opening plenary of the 2018 International Transport Forum. This session is entitled Safe and Secure Transport for the 21st century. My name is Axel Threlfall. I'm editor-at-large at Reuters out of London, and it is my job to guide you through the next couple of hours of high-level speakers, of discussion, and a little bit of music and dance. I won't give too much away at this point. We've got a very packed agenda this afternoon, so I'm going to keep my comments, these opening comments, as brief as I can, but I do want to set the scene, the overall scene for this session, and indeed for the next couple of days. Safety and security, of course, of fundamental concern for transport, both as the basis of a citizen's right to travel without fear, and as a condition for the reliable and efficient transport of goods. Enhancing transport safety and security is also an essential element in the implementation of two major international agreements, the SDGs and the Paris Climate Agreement. In fact, I came from hosting a round table on transport and climate and the critical link between those two pieces earlier on. Nearly 3,500 lives are lost each day to road crashes across the globe. On top of that, transport systems are increasingly impacted by terrorist activities and natural disasters at the global, the national, and indeed the local levels. The digital revolution, another very important piece of this, is bringing new tools and innovative approaches to improve safety and security. But new technologies, of course, generate new challenges, including the need for greater infrastructure investment, data privacy concerns, and cybersecurity risks. We will explore all of these issues over the next couple of hours. We will explore them as well over the next couple of days. Of course, to achieve all of this, we need strong leadership. And this afternoon, we will hear from leaders on the policy side, the business side, and from international organizations. We've got lots to discuss over the next few days, but plenty of opportunity to do so. 40 open summit sessions, ministerial roundtables, more than 20 presentations at the ITF Open Stage Cafe, lots of stakeholder meetings, but also exchanges in a more informal setting, receptions, the gala dinner, of course, and plenty of networking events. So please do take this opportunity to participate in any way that you can. Very quickly, how this plenary will unfold. In a moment, we'll hear some welcoming and introductory remarks. After that, we'll have our keynote. I'm then going to invite several speakers back up onto the stage for more of an interactive discussion. So that should be hopefully a fast-paced, interactive piece of this program this afternoon. With that, I'm delighted to introduce the first of our speakers, the Secretary General of the International Transport Forum, Young Tae Kim.
Good afternoon, everyone. I remember that 1 year ago I was standing as a candidate at the podium and I was nervous, but I'm very happy to meet you again, and I really thank you for coming, and everybody. So Your Royal Highness and Minister Argulis and Minister Scheuer, Ministers and Excellencies, Mayor Young, distinguished guests, welcome to the 2018 Summit of the International Transport Forum. Herzlich willkommen. Soyez bienvenus. Bienvenidos. Since transport leaders first met here in 2008, our summit has become the leading global transport policy event. This year, about 1,300 delegates attending, and 74 nations represented, and more than 40 ministers attending, more than 50 countries, companies, and organizations are present in the exhibition or host site events. All of us have come to try to make transport even safer, to try to make transport even more secure. Today, the world is adjusting to new risks and threats from climate change to terrorism. Today, the world is also at the cusp of a digital era. It'll bring new, fascinating answers, but also new questions and fears. Today, the world is also seeing a dramatic rise in the demand for transport. Growing mobility means growing opportunities for people and companies. But growing mobility also challenges us to provide new solutions that are sustainable as well as safe and secure. For us, who confront these challenges in our work every day, this summit offers a great opportunity to forge from the vast knowledge we present tools that will empower us to master great challenges. I thank you for coming from so many different places from around the world to join our debate, and you all make this event singular and unique. For 3 days, we will have so many opportunities to listen and to learn, to question and to query, to discuss and discover, and then to return home with insights and ideas we would not have had otherwise. We would not have had without being part of this very special global community. Welcome again to the 2018 ITF Summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Kim. I now give the floor to Latvia, which of course this year holds the presidency of the Transport Forum. Uldis Ogulis is Latvia's Minister for Transport. Minister, please take the stage.
Excellences, kolēģi.
The Excellencies, colleagues, ministers, Mr. Kim, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to welcome you on behalf of the Presidency of the International Transport Forum. We are happy to live in such a wonderful time, which for a majority of forum participants,
The speaker is apparently speaking in Latvian.
enjoy the not only new century but new millennium. So now already for some time we already live in the 21st century, where we see globalization, this rapid development of technologies. We see such a changing world, and we are changing with the world. And we see that also transport system is changing all the time. So we could say that in this sector we see developing multimodal, environment-friendly transport services for people and cargoes to be moved and transported very happily and efficiently for next decades and also further on. So it is planned that in the nearest decades the volumes of cargoes will increase, and it is really a challenge because we have to think how to reduce emissions, how to retain the safety and security on the road and in the air, and also how to eliminate threats, and the most important thing, how to safeguard people's lives. Our common goal today is to draw public attention to the fact,
Būtiski ir ievērot ceļu satiksmes noteikumus un cieņpilni attiekties pret pārējiem satiksmes dalībniekiem. Ceļu satiksmes
It is very important for road regulations. It is very important. It influences every citizen. It influences every passenger. It influences every driver and pedestrian. Road traffic safety is of utmost importance. Globally, we see that we have to have real work to do to improve situation globally. Of course, by developing technologies, by purposeful work, by improving people's awareness, we see that a rapid improvement has been made, but achieving more and better results can be challenging, and it is really challenging. I'm of opinion that the best tools to avoid situations that human errors or inattention or unintentional conduct causes traumatic consequences in road traffic. We have concepts safe systems and vision zero and also intelligent transport systems. We all together must achieve zero fatalities and injuries in road traffic accidents. I can be proud and tell that right now Latvia is one of the leaders of the European Union in improving road traffic safety. During previous 25 years, Latvia has implemented many different measures, and thus we have managed to reduce the number of fatalities from 2010 to 2017, and we were in the third place in the European Union.
Так, технические проблемы, уважаемые дамы и господа.
System in future will become automated.
Вы меня сейчас слышите?
Intelligent transport system usage for passenger and cargo transportation could be really a significant step to make transport system green, smart, and also sustainable. At the same time, we should solve challenges related to data protection, users' data confidentiality, and also interoperability. Cross-border cooperation among countries and groups of countries will become more and more important, and only under circumstances of fast, safe, and reliable information circulation, it will be possible to achieve the necessary efficiency of transport system. Of course, at the same time, we have to understand that it is impossible to expand the transport volume limitless. Already now, we feel consequences of pollution caused by transport. Thus, from the point of view of the environmental pollution, transport volume should be optimized and used much more efficiently. I would like to emphasize that it is very essential to develop different environment-friendly transport initiatives. Speaking about Latvian experience, sports car made in Latvia won Pikes Peak in 2016, and this is as a basis for sustainable development and sustainable mobility to make electric drive passenger minibuses. Such a vehicle that improves mobility in the city has several innovations. For instance, batteries are charged with pantograph. In addition, I would like to tell that Latvia hosted first electric go-kart race in the world on the 1st of May this year. In the Latvian exhibition stand, you can see this electric go-kart racing car built in Latvia. We see that also air transport sector is facing significant technological changes. To ensure continuously high safety and security levels, in a situation where global demand for air transport increases constantly and thus causing load on infrastructure, in a situation when threat of terrorism remains and increases involving a new type, namely cyber threat, it is necessary to have efficient organizational and innovative technical solutions. For air transport sector, it is crucial to reduce harmful, dangerous emissions. The work should be made more efficient in all directions that could result in a real reduction of emissions. And here, first of all, we should mention transition to new environment-friendly aviation technologies, optimization of routes by reducing total time of flying, and solving issue of alternative fuel and other issues. A radically new issue that requires immediate solution is development of unmanned aerial transport. This provides many new and not completely identified opportunities to both industry and consumers, and at the same time it causes new challenges to safe organization of air traffic. Speaking about this, it is related, everything this is related with global trade and efficiency of complex supply chain, and it is becoming more and more significant. People around the globe get more and more used to shopping on internet, and they hope to receive their purchases at their doorstep immediately. This is really a challenge for logistics companies. In striking a balance between speed and costs, railway transport becomes as a leader, since it is much faster than sea transport and less expensive than air transport. Latvia has great experience in organizing specialized container trains to Russia and other Commonwealth of Independent States countries, and now we have organized several test trains to and from China. Eurasian transport across railroad has real future. Latvia participates in this actively and tries to ensure maximum predictability and security. By paying much attention to railway sector, Latvia tries to promote electrification and hopes to reach goals put forward for reduction emissions. Within a framework of Project Rail Baltica, all three Baltic states, with the support of European Union, do everything possible to connect the railroad network of the three Baltic states with the other European countries. I would like to emphasize also the significance of the ECMT multilateral license quotas in development of road freight transport. In the 21st century, this license system is an essential bridge for efficient road freight transport in Eurasia, as well as for development of environment-friendly fleet in the ECMT quota member states. Finally, I would like to emphasize that this summit is a great interactive platform for exchanging best practices and experience, which gathers ministers and high-level leading experts of transport industry in all the world. We all have to continue intense work and should look for new solutions to improve safety in transport sector. I wish all the participants of the summit fruitful discussion, and let the experience gained as a result of this discussion facilitate the improvement of safety of transport systems. And let us remember, each eliminated threat and saved life is of real utmost importance. And now, ladies and gentlemen, since we have with us small part of Latvia, I invite you to enjoy Latvian national dancers. Thank you.
pašām ir maza sieva līgo, līgo, natrīt esi pazuduse līgo, līgo.
Mēs Janīti pakarām, jo salīņa sādiņos ir, lai tas turi karājās līdzi tiem Jānišiem.
Ņem Janīti grābet līdu līgo, līgo, meklē savu līga viņu līgo, līgo.
Vai puisīti vai Janīti, dāvis picu dēgonīņu, no kumeļa nolādams ir nodur mūsu simeniņu.
Ak, tu tautu nevajag līdu līgo, līgo, tavu skaistu albumiņu līgo, līgo.
Ai puisīti, kuri piķīti, kā man tevi žēl, metās citi puiši, kā ozoli, tu kā sūrava polīte.
Ai meitiņa, ai masiņa līgo, līgo, kā man tevis galžām žēl līgo, līgo.
Es gan zinu, tu puisīti man gribēji, ka tu mani negribēji, kādēļ acis mirkšķināji.
Mani strūkā biksēm pogas līgo, līgo, uz tevīmi skatoties līgo, līgo.
Čuči guli līgā viņa uz manami rociņā. Čuči guli līgā viņa uz manami rociņā. Kad tu vienu nogulēsi, tad es tevi otru došu. Kad tu vienu nogulēsi, tad es tevi otru došu. Kad tu otru nogulēsi, tad es tevi modināšu. Kad tu otru nogulēsi, tad es tevi modināšu. Cēlies manā līgā, viņa jau gailītis nodziedā. Ja cēlies manā līgā, viņa jau gailītis nodziedāja. Cēlies manā līgā, viņa jau gailītis nodziedā. Ja cēlies manā līgā, viņa jau gailītis nodziedā.
Es gulēju maigu miegu, tauties miegu negulēju. Es gulēju maigu miegu, tauties miegu negulēju. Kādi vēl neviesulīši tavas miesas kustināja, kādi vēl neviesulīši tavas miesas kustināja.
Nāc pie manis tautu meita ar savām stelītēm, nāc pie manis tautu meita ar savām stelītēm. Man pašām ir atspolīta divi zīda kamoliņi, man pašām ir atspolīta divi zīda kamoliņi.
Nāc puisīti, tu pie manis. priekšaltiņ. Lai tautieša vara bulta garām skrēja švirkstēdama.
Kalējs kala dienu nakti nenokala cilvēciņu. Es nokala cilvēciņu gultiņā gulēdams.
All right, if you didn't feel full of energy before that,
Also wer noch nicht genug Energie hatte, bevor sie den Tanz gesehen haben, hoffentlich ist es jetzt soweit. Das ist die Katvari Volkstanzgruppe aus Lettland. Und jetzt zurück zur Tagesordnung. Bitte heißen Sie mit mir Andreas Scheuer willkommen, der nächste Redner und der deutsche Verkehrsminister, Minister für Verkehr und digitale Infrastruktur. Bitte schön.
Vielen herzlichen Dank für diese schöne Überraschung.
President, thank you very much for this very nice surprise. Thank you for having given us the chance to take a look at this folk dance group. Thanks for having brought the impression of your country and shown it here on an international stage. Personally, I have a feeling that the Latvian ladies are very predominant, so welcome to you, Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary General, colleagues, a warm welcome to Leipzig. A warm welcome to Leipzig and a warm welcome to the 2018 ITF. I believe we are in a very exciting phase of innovation, and we have entered the era of the largest mobility innovation since the invention of the car. Electromobility, car sharing, autonomous driving, and networked transport. Here in Leipzig, I just had the chance to visit a car maker named BMW, who decided to invest another 300 million, and all these investments are closely connected to the topic of being open for technologies, new mobility, new materials, new business models, new cars. And they guarantee jobs and prosperity in the future. In 30 years' time, we will look back onto our times just as today we look back at 1920, slightly amused, a little bit surprised. Now, modern cars drive around as naturally as carriages did. We will ask ourselves how it could have been possible to move around in such an old-fashioned and risky way, using cars and trucks that were actually steered by a driver, bumping along roads on bicycles, or using trucks that drive without assist systems and cars without over-the-air updates. The progress and mobility does good, especially when it comes to safety. Every modern serial car is a rolling computer, a computer on wheels. Within 8 hours, it collects 4 terabytes of data, and in doing so, it knows everything about gaps, about obstacles, curves, roads, the weather, and so on and so forth. The number of car crashes will go down significantly because more than 90% of today's car crashes can be traced back to human failure. Thanks to networking, transport will change from a sum of chances to intelligent calculations. And this is the goal that I would like to discuss together with you and reach together with you. And the International Transport Forum offers positive milestones that we have to make known outside. We're all mobility countries. We rely on transport logistics and the passenger transport. Why? Because it is supposed to make the lives of our citizens better. We have many opportunities and we are aware of that. However, the requirements for being even better are safer transport. The citizens of our countries have to rely on our doing everything feasible to get them to their jobs, on their holidays, and to the supermarket without harm. This is our responsibility, and this is why it is important and it is correct to deal with safety and security this year. And it is actually a wide field. We're choosing a holistic view: data safety, crime, terror, environmental impacts. In the German federal government, I hold a very interesting position because this ministry is the investing ministry of the Federal Republic of Germany with an overall budget of approximately 27 billion euros, 60% of which are accounted for by innovations, more than 12 billion euros. And it is about satellites, as it is about small bypasses around villages. And this is what makes it so interesting, especially taken together with the topic of digitization. Tomorrow we will hear a minister's declaration on safety and the prevention of dangers, and it will contain many issues. I am looking forward to a continuing dialogue with all of you. We have a packed agenda with multilateral and bilateral events, but there are three fields of interaction: people, infrastructure, and autonomous driving as a third point. At the center of our safety measures in transport, we find human beings, and this is why we invest more than ever in information campaigns. Speed Down is one of the campaigns that you can find outside at our stand. Our agenda is directed at target groups, and it is directed to different target groups. They cover all media forms because today's young people have to be approached in a different way, but nevertheless, there are problems. Nevertheless, there are many drivers driving with a mobile phone in their hands, texting somebody. There are different points that we have selected: children and transport, young drivers, or on your bicycle, but safely so. So it's a whole wealth of different topics. Second point, infrastructure. In this term, our infrastructure will be upgraded. In Germany, we've never before had so much money in the system of transport infrastructure as today, and I'm looking forward to an intense debate. Commissioner, yesterday we discussed European and German interests, and I believe it is very important for us to think in a networked, in a cross-border way, and I am open for any kind of dialogue. A modern infrastructure is a safe infrastructure. The new possibilities of digitization are tested on digitized roads, on a digitized test field of highways, and that includes new guiding systems or radars for real-time communication between vehicles and the infrastructure. In several cities, we will implement a digital test field so as to network complex urban transport throughout all transport modes. But prevention of threats and attacks are on top of our agenda as well, as the defense against hybrid threats. This is sabotage, asymmetric warfare, and cybercrimes. Here, it is important to join ranks between all governmental actors and stakeholders as well as an international exchange with NATO and the European Union. I think we owe it to our citizens to do our utmost to make them safe. Third point, automated and autonomous driving. Computers will take on many tasks of a driver in the future, and they will reduce the amount of critical traffic situations. This is why we want to create a legal basis for fully autonomous vehicles on suitable roads. And in Germany, we have advanced quite a bit. But of course, there are many small steps to be taken on the way that already bear a huge potential today. Here I'm talking about the new business models of tomorrow. We foster the transport safety of trucks by integrating assist systems that protect pedestrians and cyclists in a better way. And this is a discussion that I would like to have on a European and an international level, because nationally we will decide that it is not possible to simply switch off an emergency brake assistant. There have been accidents, and this is why this is an important topic. Emergency brakings and corner turning assistance are important for road transport so as to bring the innovations to the market and equip the vehicles accordingly. This is why we stand in for tight regulations, and what's more, we have to seize the opportunity of digitization in transport, which of course will lead to new questions of data and cybersecurity. And this is why we have come up with an expert opinion on data security and have presented a draft to the German Parliament that focuses on data protection and security and enhances it. Actually, I think data security is the wrong term. We would have to talk about data responsibility. And I think if we work on safety and security together, if we bring forward the digitization of transport, we will reach a new level of intelligent mobility. And that will not only change the transport sector, but it will help us to reach a record level of safety. And this is our signal from Leipzig. Once again, a warm welcome on my behalf. Leipzig is always a nice destiny. Whether you come from Berlin with a high-speed rail or whether having arrived via the Leipzig airport, which is a cargo hub, by the way, or whether you come here by car or by bus, the choice is up to you. And now I hope you will have an interesting time in Leipzig and very fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Schreier, thank you very much indeed for your remarks. It gives me great honor now to introduce our keynote this afternoon, someone who has, for more than 30 years, played a leading role in supporting improved road safety both in the UK and around the world. He established the Prince Michael International Road Safety Awards to recognize achievement and innovation in road safety worldwide, and is the patron of the Towards Zero Foundation and the Global New Car Assessment Program. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent.
Thank you.
Secretary General of the International Transport Forum, ministers, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to say what a great joy it is for me to be in Leipzig for the first time and on such an important mission as this. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you at this ministerial summit on transport safety and security. Transport improves the quality of life. The precious freedom that mobility provides is much in demand and grows year on year. And that inevitably brings with it greater challenges to manage both safety and security. Governments and all transport operators, public and private, share the responsibility. Together they face mounting pressure to prevent any harm befalling people while they're on the move. Mobility exposes people to external risks, such as crime and terrorism, or risks from internal failures in the system itself, such as road crashes. Today, the public, reasonably enough, expect high levels of safety and security across all modes of transport. They hope that their mobility will not be threatened by the risk of any form of injury or worse. In some transport sectors, this is already the case. Last year, commercial aviation experienced its safest year in history. There were just 10 air crashes involving commercial flights, resulting in 44 fatalities. By contrast, 3,500 people were killed every day in our most dangerous mode of transport, road travel. Some would argue that the high level of safety in commercial aviation stems from the fact that virtually all flight movements are subject to tracking and ground control. It's also a sector with high degrees of international coordination and cooperation. Roads, by contrast, are seen as more chaotic, with vast numbers of unregulated movements occurring simultaneously in every country. Certainly, each mode of transport has its own specific features, but our world is changing fast, and technological innovation is now making feasible levels of safety across all transport modes that were previously unimaginable. This summit, for example, will be considering the advances in vehicle technology concerning driverless cars. Outside the conference hall today, the Global New Car Assessment Program is demonstrating versions of autonomous emergency braking that can help stop crashes from happening at all. They're very effective. I've just been in one of these cars, and they do stop and they don't hit the pedestrian. These systems are already in operation and are increasingly likely to be a standard feature on all new cars sold across the OECD countries. This afternoon, I'd particularly like to focus on road safety. As the moderator has just explained, 30 years ago, I established my own road safety awards scheme to recognize advances in road traffic injury prevention. The scheme began in Britain at a time when we experienced more than 5,000 fatalities a year. Today, that figure's dropped to under 2,000 through the consistent application of policies to improve the safety of vehicles, roads, and road users. My awards are now fully international, and over that time I've met a diversity of winners from around the world. They've included governments, research organizations, philanthropies, businesses, and civil society groups. In 2011, I created a special annual award for the United Nations Decade of Action for Road Safety, and I presented it in 2016 to the International Transport Forum. This was for your report, entitled Zero Road Deaths and Serious Injuries, Leading a Paradigm Shift in Road Safety, and also in recognition of your outstanding research and recommendations over a number of years. In 2008, for example, the ITF published another important report entitled Towards Zero Road Deaths, Ambitious Targets and a Safe Systems Approach. The ITF may not win many prizes for snappy titles for their report, but the quality of your research, based on input from governments and experts across the OECD countries, is undisputed. Both the ITF reports have been very influential, encouraging culprit countries to adopt best practice and move beyond the tendency to just blame the victim for every road crash. Instead, the ITF has been a leading advocate of the so-called safe system approach, which recognizes that human error is inevitable, that the focus of injury prevention should be to keep crash forces within the physical tolerances of the human body, and that there's a shared responsibility to manage our road systems accordingly. The ITF's work shows that the application of these principles is best achieved through a combination of safe vehicles, safe roads, and safe road users. Today, the world's best performing countries in road injury reduction all use variants of this safe system philosophy. The challenge now is to encourage more countries to adopt similarly effective policies. But it is worrying that recently progress has seemed to stall. The UN Decade of Action was launched in 2011 with the aim to stabilize and then reduce the level of road fatalities. But the results so far have not been as good as expected. Today, all we can say is that there's been some stabilization, but not any significant reduction. In 2015, heads of government adopted the UN Sustainable Development Goals with a target to halve road deaths and injuries by 2020, in other words, within 5 years. Unfortunately, it's clear now that this will not be achieved. Worse still, if present trends continue, the World Bank has forecast that by 2030, another 21.7 million deaths and 875.7 million injuries will occur on the world's roads, a horrifying statistic. Last month, I was pleased to represent the United Kingdom at the UN General Assembly during an important debate on improving global road safety. The resolution adopted on April the 12th sets the stage for a new global commitment to road injury prevention. Member states accepted an offer from the government of Sweden to host a third high-level global ministerial meeting on road safety in 2020. They endorsed new performance targets and agreed to establish a road safety trust fund. These are important decisions, but there seems to be a lack of public interest, a failure to grasp the urgency of what we have to do as we reach the close of the UN Decade of Action. In New York, I also had the opportunity to speak to the United Nations Road Safety Collaboration. And there I proposed 3 initiatives which I think need to be imposed if we are to meet the aim of the UN General Assembly to achieve a substantial improvement in global road safety. First, we need to establish a new UN road safety target to halve road deaths and serious injuries by 2030. This will reinvigorate the road safety ambition of the Sustainable Development Goals and provide a framework for accountability and action. The serious risk is that without a new casualty reduction target, the road safety performance of UN member states will be weakly measured and therefore poorly managed. I was pleased to see that last week the European Commission proposed such a 2030 target for the European Union, and I hope the UN will follow this promising example. It would certainly be a good outcome for the forthcoming third global ministerial meeting in Sweden to endorse a new target for 2030. The second thing we need to do is to mobilize new resources to finance road injury prevention programs. Here, I'd like to pay tribute to the efforts of Jean Todt, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy, and the Secretariat of the UNECE for their tireless efforts in support of the new UN Road Safety Trust Fund. Compared with other major health epidemics like HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, road safety is very poorly funded. Apart from the excellent examples of the Bloomberg Philanthropies and the FIA Foundation, there are very few donors in this field. I'm pleased that we in Britain have been a long-standing contributor to the World Bank's Global Road Safety Facility. But now is the time for other countries to come forward and become new donors to the cause. And the third thing we need are much stronger political commitment to road safety. We know that the countries with the best road safety performance have benefited from strong and sustained political support. In that context, I was glad that the UN General Assembly last month acknowledged the key role of legislators in passing effective road safety policies and laws and allocating budgetary support. I'm also pleased that the Towards Zero Foundation, of which, as you've heard, I'm patron, has established the global network for road safety legislators. With help and support from the World Health Organization and Bloomberg Philanthropies, the global network aims to encourage parliamentarians to share best practice in road safety legislation and policies. Political engagement like this will be an essential ingredient of effective road injury prevention in the decade to 2030. My three-point plan to set a UN target for 2030, to boost funding, and to increase political commitment for road safety is interrelated. A target is needed to measure performance. Funds are needed for effectiveness, and political commitment is needed for action. All three are about leadership. This ITF summit is a forum where transport ministers can demonstrate leadership, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity to address you. In your discussions here today in Leipzig and in your ministerial roles back home, please keep in mind what's at stake between now and 2030. Think of the lives that will be needlessly lost, the families shattered, and the tragic waste from another 20 million plus road fatalities, mostly preventable. I wish you all every success in your collective efforts to prevent that from happening, but I'm sorry to say there's an awful lot more to be done. Thank you.
감사드립니다. 몇 가지 질문을 드리겠습니다. 우리가 연설을 토대로 질문을 드린다면은 3개 조항으로 된 이 타겟팅 재원을 증대하고 정치적인 의지를 말씀하셨는데 우려를 표명하셨습니다. 그렇다면 얼마나 기대를 하고 계십니까? 얼마나 리더십이 발휘될까요? 이 계획이 시기 적절하게 예정대로 진행될 수 있을까요? 우선 우리가 장관회의를 스웨덴에서 기대를 해봐야 합니다. 2020년에 열릴 예정인데 사람들이 우리가 그때 어떤 목표를 세웠는지 살펴봐야 되고 그때 국제사회가 이제 제안을 하고 하기를 바랍니다. 우리가 또한 해야 하는 일은 UN 총회를 통해서 우리가 해야 하는 일을 승인을 하고 미래 리더십을 보여줘야 한다라고 합니다. 그리고 가장 중요한 것은 우리가 기존의 UN 도로 안전에 있어서의 지침을 바꾸는 것입니다. 새로운 야심찬 프로그램을 제시해야 합니다. 2030년의 목표를 향해 제시해야 합니다. 이 목표와 세계의 점에 대해서 이야기를 하셨는데 정치적인 의지, 재원 투입 증대 등을 얘기하셨는데 가장 큰 현안이 무엇일까요?
We have to look into the future. It's a very difficult subject to look into the future with, but the impressive input from all the different agencies involved is such that the last one I think is the most important, that we do set a new target for 2030.
Your Royal Highness, it's been a pleasure to hear you speak. Thank you very much indeed. His Royal Highness, Prince Michael of Kent. Right, what I'd like to do now, we have one more speaker before we begin our panel discussion. What I'd like to do now is give the floor to Jean Todt, who was just mentioned by His Royal Highness, for a response to that, if you like. Jean is UN Special Envoy for Road Safety and President of the FIA, and I'm delighted to welcome him here today.
President of the International Transport Forum and Minister for Transport of Latvia, dear Uldis Ogulis, Secretary General of ITF, dear Jan Tekim, Federal Minister of Transport of Germany, dear Andy Scheuer, dear Commissioner Violeta Bulc, Your Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent, Minister, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent for his kind words. I believe it is just fair to say we are now advancing on a pace he started charting many years ago, and whatever progress achieved so far is a testimony to his vision. At the same time, the path ahead of us is still long and demands our steadfast commitment. It is a great pleasure to be with you all today in Leipzig during this important summit on safe and secure transport for the 21st century. Leipzig has become a must for all those thinking the future of mobility. And for me, the future of mobility can be summed up in 3 words: safer, cleaner, smarter. As safety is the first pillar of this vision, I would like to start by briefly reminding everyone here today of the impact road safety has on sustainable development around the world. According to the World Health Organization, road traffic crashes are one of the world's leading causes of death, and it was remembered many times today, with 3,500 lives per day, 500 of which are children. Low and middle income countries, the most affected by this public health crisis, accounting for 90% of global road traffic fatalities. In addition to this tragic loss of life, road crashes have a staggering economic impact, robbing the global economy of more than $500 billion every year and costing some countries up to 5% of the GDP. The outlook is even more startling when we take into account increasing urbanization trends. According to UN figures, 66% of the global population will live in urban areas by 2050. If no changes are made, this spike in urbanization will come with an increase in the number of motor vehicles and, sadly, an increase in road traffic fatalities. No longer can we accept this situation. In response, the international community is taking action. To tackle this global public health crisis, in 2010, the UN General Assembly officially proclaimed the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety, with the overarching goal to stabilize and reduce road traffic deaths around the world by 2020. Global road safety received a further boost with 2 targets in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, in particular Target 3.6 of the SDG, has thus committed to halving by 1.25 million deaths on world roads every year by 2020. Target 11.2 also provide access by 2030 to safe, affordable, accessible and sustainable transport system for all, improving road safety, notably by expanding public transport with special attention to the needs of those in vulnerable situations, women, children, persons with disabilities, or older persons. I can only be honest, it is very unlikely that we can achieve the 2020 target. But we must do everything we can to achieve it at the nearest possible horizon. And I concur that it should be no later than 2030. Strong commitment from political leaders is crucial. They need to focus on improving road safety based on the safe system approach. This means a commitment to effective legislation, which is properly enforced, safer roads, vehicles and drivers, and better post-crash care. We have seen in high-income countries such as Latvia, for example, that progress is possible when such measures are implemented for the safety of all users. As FIA President, I launched 1 year ago the 3,500 Life campaign, an unprecedented international road safety prevention campaign already broadcast in several languages in 900 cities in 80 countries. I hope all of you have seen the banners downstairs and around the city in Leipzig. For over 2 years now, the FIA High-Level Panel for Road Safety is a high-level consultative group bringing together economic decision makers and stakeholders in the international community, and has actively campaigned for an international mobilization. The high-level panel group of experts met yesterday in Leipzig, and I greet them warmly. As many of you are aware, I also have the honor to have been appointed the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for Road Safety. My mandate in this role covers 4 priorities: supporting global partnership to improve road safety with a focus of funding, advocating with governments, civil society, and the private sector to promote road safety, participating in global and regional conferences and meetings on road safety, and advocating the accession to and more effective implementation of UN road safety legal instruments. Almost 1 billion people live in countries that have not acceded to any of the UN road safety conventions. The ratification and implementation of these agreements by more countries around the world is critical, and I work and will work with government to this end. For this mission, I'm supported by UNEC, other United Nations agencies and international organizations like the World Bank, and working together, we have had some significant achievements. But much more remains to be done. There is another crucial point. Underfinancing represents a significant obstacles to meeting safety targets, especially for developing countries. AIDS, tuberculosis, or malaria generate up to 1,000 times more financial than road safety. Yet, they all share similar fatality rates. While these other worthwhile causes are able to generate billions of dollars in funding every year, road safety, unfortunately, remains far behind. But recently, things have changed. Last 12th of April in New York, road safety has won a major battle with a decision of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to establish a UN Road Safety Trust Fund. It will contribute to closing the significant funding gap between road safety and other global public health issues. Dear friends, millions of lives are at stake. The launch of this UN Road Safety Trust Fund is a major step forward. There is now an urgency to mobilize financial resources. I therefore call on all stakeholders, UN member states and partners to contribute to this fund. The first donors are the FIA Foundation, the Total Group, 3M, and many thanks to them, but it is just a beginning. Every country that succeeded in working its way out of the road safety crisis must now take its share in helping the ones which are still struggling. Every large corporation that stands to benefit from safer global mobility must help it happen. And anyone else who believes saving lives is a priority is welcome to contribute. That is my priority, and I hope it will be your priority, and that's what I came to ask you for. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jean. Same thing as before, a couple of questions, if I may. The UN Road Safety Trust Fund, I'd like to delve a little bit into that. Yes, this is about going out to member states, to business, etc., to resource this fund, to raise money. What initial noises have you heard? Again, it's a how hopeful question.
I mean, first, I said it's a game changer. But, and of course, we need the involvement of member states, but not only. So we need public sector to participate to this global fund. And we are going to host one advisory board and one executive committee in the coming weeks in order to build a team. And everybody knows that I've been involved very often in my life in building teams, and now we need to make probably the most important team to achieve that.
And of course, you have a captive audience here. There's a lot of business here. There's a lot of... Yeah, go ahead, John.
If I may, and a lot have demonstrated that they can achieve a result. I see Violeta Bulke here with very committed, and in Europe, 25,000 people are dying, which is, a scary figure. But 40 years ago, it was more than 100,000. So it means that we have the prescription, we know what to do. Unfortunately, in developing countries where 90% of those figures are occurring, not enough or almost nothing has been done so far.
Is it, and hopefully this isn't an unfair question, but is it tougher to get this from the policy side or from the business side, this sort of resource?
Time will tell. I hope that we will be facing responsible people.
How are we doing with our setup here? Oh, I've got time, I think, for one more. And that, John, is going to be the take-up of the UN conventions for road safety. How happy are you with progress on that, and what can be done to accelerate that?
Honestly, if I'm sincere, I'm not happy, because 2 little countries have committed to the UN road safety conventions. Can you imagine that 1 billion people 1 billion people involved have no UN road safety conventions. Globally, less than 50% have subscribed to UN road safety convention. So there is a lot to be done, but we learn from the best, and I'm here in this room, a lot have been doing the proper job, and I think it is time now that they also encourage some other member states to do what we know can be done.
Very good, Jean. Thank you very much indeed. Jean Todt, everybody. Don't go away, Jean, because you are joining us for our panel. So do grab your seat. It should have your... Yeah, here we go, right here. And I'd like to invite the other panelists up now as well. Violeta Bulc, who we just heard Jean mention, European Commissioner for Mobility and Transport at the European Commission. Commissioner, welcome. Thomas Eneroth, Minister of Infrastructure in Sweden. Minister, thank you for joining us. Derek Kahn, Undersecretary of Transportation for Policy of the US Department of Transportation. Laurent Troger, President Bombardier Transportation. Masamichi Kono, Deputy Secretary General of the OECD. Fang Liu, Secretary General, International Civil Aviation Organization. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome back Uldis Ogulis, the Minister for Transport for Latvia. So as you can all see, quite a panel. I think we've got all our bases covered here. And as I said at the start, I'd like to keep it as interactive as I can. But what I'm going to do to start with is just go round briefly and get some brief opening comments from at least those members of the panel that we haven't heard from yet, and then we'll open it up to a discussion. Commissioner, I'm going to start with you. We've heard today, over the last hour or so, the key challenges, I think it's fair to say, from a global perspective. How is Europe specifically approaching the issue of safety?
Hello, first, and thank you for giving me a chance to be part of this panel. As it was already said, Europe is very ambitious, and we have achieved a certain level of results already, but by far being satisfactory. How do we go about? It was already mentioned by the keynote speaker that we see stagnation, and that's exactly what Europe was facing 2 years in a row, 2 years ago. And it's not only that we kind of exaggerated the tools that we've been using, but the traffic load has started to increase. And so to achieve 2% of improvement actually was much better improvement than the figure itself shows. But at the same time, of course, it showed us that the existing tools might not be effective anymore. So we took a very dramatic approach. We understood, and that's exactly what the speakers were inviting us to make a shift in understanding how road safety should be addressed. We started to engage the entire ecosystem, all stakeholders, in lots of brainstorming sessions, and then understood that many elements of the system needs to be addressed. So this introduction of a safety system we took seriously on board. We created a new targets that were signed by all ministers of EU in a declaration on road safety, together with the serious injury targets as well, because it's not enough only to measure the fatalities, but it's also very important to look at the serious injuries. Statistics are really eye-opening. Yeah. Last year, 25,300 people lost lives in European Union on European roads, and 137,000 were seriously injured. We made an estimation that around 120 billion euros are only spent per year only on rehabilitation costs. All this is not even speaking about an incredible sadness and tragedy that is associated with every single family. So that's why I believe that serious legislative acts are necessary. Last week we introduced the so-called third mobility package, which is for the first time systemic approach to road safety on the EU level, being very much encouraged by what John Todt is doing on a UN level, trying to really support his initiatives, be one of his ambassadors, and show that political leadership can really pay off. And here every single minister in the European member states now is an ambassador for road safety. And let me just finish that an important part is not only to set on a vehicle level new features that will now become mandatory by 2019, and some of them a bit later on heavy-duty vehicles, not only to set a very clear targets on the quality of roads, but be present also with investments.
Sorry, I spend my life interrupting ministers and commissioners. I apologize. But back to the three-point plan that we heard. Target, resources, political commitment. What's the biggest challenge in Europe, would you say?
In Europe, the biggest challenge is to act as EU, because it's about also cross-border cooperation. And I think we need to stop prioritizing it, but just say all of them needs to be addressed. All of them needs to be addressed in an ecosystem spirit and in a system manner. So I believe that that is the only way forward, and constantly in a sort of a spiral way, improve every single section of the system.
Minister Eneroth, Sweden performs comparatively well on transport safety, but clearly challenges, big challenges remain. A lot of the success, I believe, comes from smooth collaboration. Tell us how this works, how you got there on the collaborative side.
Well, thank you. Well, in my way, there is a tradition, since we have collaborated together with the Swedish automotive industry, with the People's Movement and authorities and other organizations through a long time, starting almost 50 years ago with forming the strategic plan for traffic safety. And then when we launched the Vision Zero model, I think that has the revolution, our idea of looking upon traffic safety. It's a safe system approach that I think you must take in consideration. You can't not campaigning about learning how to drive or how to behave in the traffic. You must design, you must form the transport system so it can be, well, we are humans, and humans make mistakes, but so we must design the traffic system so human errors can be taken into consideration. And that's the way both the automotive industry works, especially at home in Sweden with Volvo and Scania and other trademarks, of course, but also when we design a traffic system. And now we have, I think, 253 casualties last year in Sweden. And of course, that's a tragedy, but it's also the lowest number of casualties ever in Sweden in traffic. In that case, I can see that the model is working, and we have got a very good support from not only Jean Todt and the work that you have done, but also now when the European Union are launching this approach also to other countries. But I think using automatic speed controls, sobriety checks in harbors, or have road barriers and so on, next step is becoming even more challenge for all of us, because it is about introducing the new technology, the digitalization of the transport system, the automotive cars and the connected cars. How can we use the new technology to become a safer traffic environment? And it's within reach. Right now, there are driving cars in the city of Gothenburg with no drivers. Since we have allowed the local authorities to have this test in the city of Gothenburg. And I think that's the way to see what social interaction, how people react when they see a car without a driver, and how this can be a challenge to become safer in the traffic, but also more efficient, to be honest also.
Minister, I'm glad you raised the innovation and technology point. It's something we'll delve into in a little while in more detail. But just to that point very quickly, I mean, a lot of this, we talk about the Internet of Things, we talk about connectivity, it's still quite murky. A lot of this is about trust, isn't it? And you need to build that trust. And that isn't necessarily about the technology. That's about communication. That's about a host of other pieces. How do you get that right in Sweden?
Well, I think the idea is to have, by allowing these tests, you can also study the social interaction, how people, can they trust the new technology? And in fact, yes, mostly they can. Actually, when you see the autonomous and cars driving, people are trying the new technology by trying to stop the buses or the cars, and they stop. It's more safer than if you had a person driving the vehicle. So in that case, you're building the trust. But of course, every time an accident, of course, happen, and that will happen, the reaction from the society must be taken in consideration. And I think here is a discussion about the automotive industry to be open, how we deal with the information that we create when automotive industry and the telecom industry are merging. We create a lot of data that has a possibility to commercialize, yes, but it's also very important to give the public the right information. What is really happening? Yep. What is the true, especially in these times of fake news? I think it's even more important.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Minister. Derek Khan, what is the US prioritizing in terms of safety and security? And, you know, there are lots of pieces of this, but what would you say you're prioritizing right now?
Sure. As the Minister of Sweden was just talking about data, we are spending a ton of time looking at advanced analytics. If you think about data today is like oil was 150 years ago. And analytics, artificial intelligence, is the combustion engine. And so right now around the world, there's a desire to best understand, A, collect all the data, and B, develop the algorithms, the most advanced combustion engine to process this data. And so one of the things we're doing at the U.S. Department of Transportation is working with cities and states across the country, better understanding and creating a lot of sandboxes for cities and states to experiment and better understand their data. 3 cities that come to mind, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Tennessee, they've all created clusters of technologists, of academicians, of data analytics, and brought these together, and we're seeing a significant reduction in traffic fatalities, in crash respondents. In Tennessee alone, the state led this effort where 30% of crash response times were reduced because police were able to predict where accidents would occur. And this isn't something that is idealistic gas, that is centuries away or decades away. It's something we could do right now. And instead of building a big road and spending billions of dollars, we actually can reduce congestion, improve highway safety through bits and bytes and devices that are in our pockets. There's an old quote in data that people use data like a drunk person uses a lamppost. They use it as a crutch and not for illumination.
Yeah.
And I think we're at a unique period of time in history, all of us in this room, where we have the power, the data collection devices in our pockets, and the intelligence collectively to really address some of these problems, which would transform our cities, transform our communities, and take a big hit to that 3,500 traffic fatality number we see every year.
A follow-up on that. I mean, it's a great analogy, that the drunk and the lamppost. But you know, as you say, data collection is one thing. Using that data to inform policy in an intelligent way is another. Can you give us an example of how the U.S. is doing that in an effective manner?
Absolutely, Axel. It's important to walk before you can run. And so when we think about data, big words, you throw out Internet of Things, data analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, it feels like we're at a venture capital pitch. Instead of trying to run, we should walk. And I think at the Department of Transportation, we've said, let's start walking before we can run. And what that means is 3 steps. First step is just use basic data visualization tools. So if you look at any of the reports all of us produce, they're thick binders with tables and tables of numbers that really are hard to digest and analyze. So step one of the things we're doing is partnering with a lot of the data firms in this room, a lot of Silicon Valley companies, to say, how do we better visualize traffic fatality numbers? What seat in the car is the most high-risk seat? What is the average speed across each state that a person is driving when they're killed in a car accident? And this data visualization helps unlock tremendous insights. Number 2, after visualizing the data, integrating data sets. Department of Transportation, we collect 753 databases across a bunch of different random pieces of transportation modes. What we have done is started thinking, wouldn't it make sense to start integrating some of these data? So number 2, data integration. And those 2 combined, visualization plus integration, allows you to start setting the path to predictive analytics. And our hope is in 5 years or so, we would be able to introduce advanced data analytics, prediction tools to traffic safety, particularly around highway fatalities.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Laurent Trogier from Bombardier. Give us a sense of how critical safety and security is in your industry. And what I'm particularly interested to hear is how you reconcile safety and security with efficiencies and cost.
So the first thing is that we've spoken a lot about cars, and I've heard about public health crisis, and if you want a good pill, take the train. It's quite safe, and plane as well. So we have other solutions as well as car. I can understand the issue. So let me talk about the trains today. I think that this is one of the safest modes of transportation that we have. And I think it brings a lot to community in the economic development. And it has demonstrated that for more than 100 years ago, and it's still a modern mode of transportation, and I can hear a lot of politicians and decision makers here are, of course, considering this mode of transportation as a clean one, because most of it is already electrical. It's a smart one because it's already integrated with the new digital technology. It's becoming easier to use, and at the same time, it's a very efficient one. So at the end, for me, is how I do bring more safety and security into our product and services every day. And here, I would have to say it's a question of leadership. And in my company, every management meeting starts by safety conversation. And every 2 weeks, the top 1,000 managers of the company, we have a safety brief. And I think this is a very, very important element to bring safety in the DNA of an organization. On top of that, we bring safety into every design of our product and our services, and we have independent review for that. We've been doing that extensively, but we are continuously improving the design of our product to be even safer. Now, the challenge we have, in particular on train, this is to have at the same time an increase of the capacity and of the safety. And here we need a combination of the two. So the challenge for us is very high because we need to move more and more people every day. So Bombardier, we are impacting 500 million people every day. And we have to make sure at the same time that it is safe. It's a combination between the two. And of course, if you want to be very safe, you may have an impact on your capacity. So if you brake too much, you have less flow on your infrastructure. So the combination of the two is the challenge. And we have developed technologies that are now being more and more used, such as communication-based train control and driverless application, where we are ultimately providing two at the same time, the capacity and the safety. And you can have this application now in cities, but also you start to hear that this application can come between intercities, where you could have driverless train between two cities. So for us, it's a great moment because technologies are there. Now, what is the challenge is to continue the investment with, of course, the stakeholders and the decision makers to bring more of this type of new infrastructure that will enable to have more trains, more autonomous, and that will bring more capacity, and that we will be even safer. At the same time, they are very green, they are very smart, and they are very efficient.
Is digitalization, very quickly, and again, it's something we'll come back to, but digitalization, is it a challenge or an opportunity?
Digitalization for us is not a challenge, it's a great opportunity. Now, what is important is the roadmap of digitalization. When you look at the technology that are emerging, a lot is emerging that the question is how long those technology will be sustainable over time. So if you take an investment on infrastructure on train, it's a 30 to 50-year investment. So to integrate the technology today, we are already doing it. Now is how to integrate that into a roadmap that will be supported over this long period of time that we need on our infrastructure. And that's the challenge.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Masabichi Kono from the OECD. How would you characterize, I mean, there are lots of different pieces of this that you can talk to, and climate change is one. I'm going to come into that in a second. But let's just talk about the role of government and the role of business. How would the OECD characterize the relationship between those two parts, between government and the private sector?
Thank you. First of all, a great honor and pleasure to be here on behalf of the OECD and my Secretary General, Angel Gria, who would have liked to come here personally. Safe and secure transport is really so fundamental to better lives, to our well-being. And sometimes we take this for granted, too much for granted. But then, at the OECD, we always think about, of course, better policies for better lives. That is our motto. And what we now consider important is to take a much broader horizontal view concerning policies across different governmental agencies, different areas, and then also work more closely together with the private sector. And I will explain why. Two challenges that we are facing. One is digitalization and the new technologies, and we already heard about the opportunities, but there are huge risks there also. I mean, more mobility and more interconnectedness, that means that cybersecurity is really becoming a threat to the entire transport system, and just one glitch can cause a huge disruption, so and therefore economic loss, tremendous economic loss. I have some figures here which I won't explain in the interest of time, but so we need to harness the technologies and also to make better use. I'm also glad that data was mentioned, but data again, I mean, we need the right regulations, we need the right safeguards, we need the right or the smart way of using data. And for all this, we need policies not just in the transport ministry or in the agencies that are responsible for transport, but also all across government, and we call this a whole of government approach. And then with the private sector. Investment, we need tremendous amounts of investment, not just for making our growth sustainable, but with those challenges of digitalization, with those challenges of climate change, huge investments are required, but we can't just fund this through public finance. I mean, governments can't fund them all. We need private sector.
Is too much onus being put on the private sector, though?
Too much.
Too much onus. Too much of a burden. Is it being? It's too. Is the policy side expecting too much of the private sector?
I wouldn't say that. That is, I think we have better ways of bringing together our efforts, and we have such a means as financing development called blended finance. I mean, we can make much better use of public finance and private finance together. Of course, we have long discussed private and public-private partnerships, PPPs. But more than that, we have better ways of actually having private sector investment come in, not through any kind of mandatory measures or restrictions or whatever, but more as an economically intelligent and a profitable way of investing.
Okay, I'm going to come back to climate change. Fang Liu, let me bring you into this conversation and get the aviation perspective. Air transport has, I think it's fair to say, a pretty enviable, pretty admirable track record. But just give us a sense of how vulnerable you think aviation is on the safety side and the security side right now in this day and age.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to ICAO. ICAO is the International Civil Aviation Organization and the UN Specialized Agency for the civil aviation. Safety of civil aviation, actually, it's the culture already built in our sector. So we are doing a very good job, I should say. However, we still have lots need to be done. In particular, taking into account the traffic volume will be doubling in less than 15 years by 2030. So in particular, our sector is a truly global sector. As everyone came here, I think most of you by a plane. So we have now 100,000 daily flights operated and supported by our global system. And in order for our global system to be safe, and we need to make every step and also every country to establish a robust safety oversight system, and also to ensure all the operators carry out our standards and also regulations. Then, with this global system, obviously, there is a vulnerability and also disruption. For instance, in the couple of years ago, you experienced volcanic ash, and it made the whole global business in a disrupted manner. And also, you can see sometimes health diseases like Ebola in Africa, and that also made our system disrupted. And not talking about financial crisis and economic downsides, and made our system also disrupted and also in a vulnerable situation. And everyone also knows 9/11 attack, and no doubt made our system even more vulnerable. Unfortunately, air transport is the target of the terrorism. So in order to ensure our system be safe and secure, on the one side, we enhance our standards. For time being, we already have more than 12,000 international standards. And also, we introduced more than 10 years ago, audit system. We audit our member states' safety and security effective implementation. And in the recent years, in order to assist our member states to correct deficiencies after audit finding, we enhanced our technical assistance. We call the No Country Left Behind. And with all these activities, we hope our system will be safer, more secure, and also more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Just picking you up on the safety piece, and I guess this is something that just fascinates me. And apologies if it's a little naive, but a traditional car has what, 10,000 moving parts, or maybe a bit more. An aeroplane, a modern jet, has what, 350,000 or something moving parts. How do you consistently achieve such good safety results, given the complexity of the network?
And one of the important elements, as I said, the safety culture built not only in our civil aviation authorities, but also industry. And airports, airlines, as well as air navigation service providers, every component of our civil aviation, I think, establish safety culture. Nowadays, we would like to build security culture into our system. And that is also extremely important, in particular in the context of global terrorism situation. So I think that is a very important issue. And of course, to build a culture, we need not only have standards, but also the leadership, and also enhance awareness, and also the system in place in every component of our players.
Okay, thank you. Jean-Todt, and then Minister, I'll come to you. But Jean-Todt, let me bring you back into this conversation. We've heard from trains, we've heard from planes, back to cars. When we talk about a safety culture, how does the safety culture in your sector stand up to the safety culture in the aviation sector and the sector that Bombardier operates in?
I mean, it's very diversified, all depending which country you are talking about. And clearly, some countries have been a model in that. And in a way, it started about 45 years back, when it was really conscious that it was not acceptable to tolerate the number of victims on the road. So some countries initiated. I remember I'm French, and I remember around the years 1970, it was 80,000 people were dying in the road in France every year. And 45 years after, 3,500 with 3 times more vehicles, because the government decided that it was going to stop, and we had the prescription. Unfortunately, in what we call the developing countries, the world which is left behind, I mean, the figures are still increasing. So on one side, you have seen sensational results, and unfortunately, on the other side, you see one increase. And of course, it's a problem also of culture, of discipline. And if you speak to a Swedish, I mean, he will have a different approach than somebody in India or in Bangladesh or in Uganda. So clearly, and that's why we need that each government decides that it is going to be on top of my list, as it is for other pandemics. because I mean, road crashes, road victims, I mean, is a pandemic at the same level that HIV/AIDS, malaria, or tuberculosis.
All right, thank you. Minister, let me just get a short statement from you generally, and then I want to last for 15, 20 minutes, open it up for really for a free-for-all discussion. On the back of what Jean just said, we've clearly seen huge improvements in road safety in Latvia. Road deaths are not up despite the huge popularity of transport. How has Latvia overseen this? How have you made that progress? What are the greatest challenges now?
Well, I should say, first of all, that what I was also mentioned by Jean Todt, that really we need to work with public. We have to educate public in general, because many of the violations are really in person's head. Either you do not understand what you do on the road when you talk on the phone while driving, or you do not observe permitted speed, or you drive when you are drunk. All these these are the veils on which we base. So we try to regulate all this. We should have a logical approach. We have to use traffic lights, road signs, and we have done a lot. We have introduced speed cameras and speed traps. We have these black dots, so black points. So we have covered the whole territory of Latvia with speed cameras. We fix these speeds. But of course, we have to educate public. Today we also participated in crash tests, and we say that we can equip cars and vehicles. We are improving the cars, and very soon vehicles will be equipped fully. But within the next decades, will they be fully automated? That is a question, of course. But anyway, we have other traffic participants. We have bicycle drivers, motor roller drivers, we have pedestrians, and we have to think also about them, because we have to inform public how to cross the street, for instance, how to go along the street, because very often we see that we do not have so much victims in car collisions, but we have these pedestrians, for instance, who have been crossing the street, and the car has been not so young, just old, and could not brake so fast. So I wouldn't say that we have made a huge step towards progress, but we still have made some step, and we are still educating the public, and I'm not so sure that we have to have more regulation. But it is clear that we need standards to cooperate among countries. So when we go from one country to another country to understand traffic regulation in another country, this also actually makes a problem for people. If you drive from one country to another, you should understand traffic rules there. So we have made one step, but we have to make more steps. Thank you.
And there are a few bits and pieces I still want to touch on, and climate is one. I want to come back to the funding. And Derek Hahn, maybe I can start with you on funding. How tough is the situation now in the US, the current administration? Where are the bottlenecks? Give us some juicy anecdotal examples of how difficult things might be right now.
Funding general, or funding for what?
For what we're talking about here.
Well, U.S. government has shut down a few times over the last 12 months, so funding is a very difficult thing. It's unfortunately highly politicized at times. But I think the funding from states are oftentimes difficult, and we talked earlier about funding from private sector. What we have oftentimes found is it's important to highlight the win-win situation where you align interests. So why does reducing traffic fatalities help specific companies, and really making the pitch that way? I think from the federal government's perspective, oftentimes in this administration, it is oftentimes difficult to either sign up for an agreement or commit funding to some broader effort when it's not completely clear the perfect incentives for the U.S. government. And so that's probably one of the key lenses we would look through. But overall, we have $1 trillion deficit. We're actually trying to reduce spending all across the board. So I think funding from public sector, at least the United States, will frankly be difficult.
How does the Commission look at this? I mean, clearly there are lots of different countries we're talking about here, but from where you're sitting, how do you view the funding piece?
Well, now we have a clear European strategy and a European action plan for road safety. We launch also for the first time the financial call for projects throughout the EU that will be co-financed on road safety. But I would like to challenge us a little bit that not technologies, not financing, it is really maybe today a unique opportunity that we finally declare that road fatalities and serious injuries are no longer socially acceptable. Because it is socially unacceptable that we would have one air crash per week globally. And that's exactly how many people we lose every week on roads, in Europe only. So if we start with this kind of important step and say no more, Vision Zero is completely achievable. We said in Europe that we're going to achieve it by 2050. Then we can work with 3 proposals that His Excellency proposed, which were the targets, then the new resources and political commitments. And within this space, we can develop road safety culture that could achieve similar success as we achieved in aviation, as we achieved it in railways, which is the safest mode currently. So I think this comes first. And then we can start really engaging in investments. EU has committed investments in this financial period by 2020, and we assured for the first time a road safety co-investment for the new financial period. So it is a commitment that we are asking for, and every single one of us who's here today in this hall has a very important ambassador's role to play.
Yeah, Minister, I know you want to say something about funding, but just on this piece, this idea of it being socially acceptable. I mean, what we're talking about here is, yes, a commitment. We're talking about changing a mindset, stopping people think that it's okay and it's normal that this number of people die every week in road accidents. How do you change that mindset? How do you even start on that?
Well, I think one way is to show the effects. I mean, everyone can understand the tragic loss for the families, what happens, and as mentioned here earlier from His Royal Highness, I think that's one reason one way to raise the awareness. It could happen to me, and I think that's also one way to get the broad public support for these kind of investments. But the problem is you must do the investment right. You must make the investments in infrastructure, in building new cities, so it became safer from the beginning. And I think that's the challenge, especially now when we are implementing new technology in building the new smart cities. So here I think there's the one theme of maybe the high-level conference on road safety in 2020 that we will have, because this is a challenge for all of us. But then when it comes to safer and secure, well, in these times, I think also we must focus on the public's fear for terror attacks and for the possibility to use new technology to threaten people at their home backyard. In Sweden, we're working together with the industry, with Volvo, Scania, and other companies to implement geofencing, digital fences in specific areas where you can lower the speed for the vehicles or even stop the vehicles entering the city center. And actually we will test this next week in Sweden for the first demonstration. This was a discussion after the terror attack in Drottninggatan in Sweden. But if you realize this is not only a way of having more secure cities, but it's also a way of controlling the traffic, making the environment more safety with new technologies. But for acceptance with that, you must show the results, you must have open data, you must have a discussion, how do we use this information? And I think then you can realize that it is possible to reach the Vision Zero.
Is anyone else doing that?
I think we are the first one to have geofencing, and I'm very proud of it.
Why is that? Is it because you're further along on this trust piece, the trust scale with the open data, and why is that?
Well, I really don't know, but I think there will be a lot of followers here because there is a lot of interest, both from the automotive industry, the telecom industry, and the political discussion in Sweden, because we don't want to accept a situation where citizens will be threatened at their home backyards, not knowing if someone can hijack a vehicle and threaten their lives. That's why we must build secure system, and we can use these tools also not only about terror attacks, but also to control the traffic situation and make it safer. So there's a challenge, but there's a lot of opportunities, and I'm quite optimistic too.
What is the next? I want to bring it back to cybersecurity. What is the next part of this now? Because everything I hear, whether I'm talking about, everything I hear when it comes to this sort of crime is that the bad actors are always one step ahead of law enforcement anyway. How do we get to that next level and ensure that these systems are secure, ensure that the public can feel confident? Anyone? Minister, go ahead.
Jā, pirmām kārtām mums ir jārunā par to.
First of all, we have to speak about the way how we will use these data, because as we know that 25th of May, it is when the new regulation becomes into force, and thus we have to be very careful with using all the data. But at the same time, I think that the development is development is in front of those who perform the cybercrime. I think that all these innovations, cyber safety, everything can be used. The question is how much time it will take and in how many countries we can use this. If just some countries will reach the results, then anyway we will have a large number of countries globally which still have fatalities, large numbers of fatalities, and so this cyber safety anyway should be used globally, and we have to explain what it is. And Jean Todt's idea about known people who express this opinion and explain what does it mean for every family is at casualty. This is really a good idea. Here also we are sitting here and we are discussing, and we are those who are these special envoys for this idea that we have to behave on the road. Otherwise you threaten not only yourself, you threaten also others around you, and each person should understand this. Technologies will develop, they will help and assist us. I have a phone in my pocket some 20 years ago. You remember we had just buttons to press. Right now I have an almost computer in my pocket. Technologies are developing, but we have to develop also people's minds, and that is the largest challenge for all of us.
I'm being told I've got to wrap up. There is so much to cover and so much more I wanted to get into, and hopefully over the next few days we'll get into some of these issues. My apologies, we can talk about climate, but let me just throw this final question out there on autonomous vehicles. And you mentioned it, and you mentioned I think I was right in saying your skepticism about fully automated processes within the next decades. Is this the answer, do you think, anyone, to the safety and the security issue? Anyone? Go ahead, John.
I could start. I mean, clearly it's a great step forward. And I mean, you must see the evolution of automotive over the last century. I mean, you go to Latvia Museum, you will see a car early 90s, and you see a car now. But clearly, that is not the answer to halve the number of victims by 2020 or by 2030. Because surely in some developed countries, we will have autonomous car quickly. You know, it will arrive. But unfortunately, 90% of the victims are in developing countries.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us, unfortunately, will not be there when it can happen.
Yeah. Anyone else? Joe?
I was going to make a similar point. Two similar. First point, 19% of Americans live in rural America, yet rural America accounts for 50% of traffic fatalities. And so that's telling that as automation comes, we will likely see automation largely in our urban cities, in all of our urban cities around the world. And that's, statistically speaking, not where large industrial urban cities are where most of traffic fatalities occur. And so automation will help parts of it, but it won't solve all the problems. The second is with any new technology, whether it's electric vehicles, automation, the adoption curve is actually a very long curve, meaning in America, 1.6% of all cars are electric vehicles. Automation, automated vehicles, fully automated vehicles, meaning L4, L5, will likely take a generation before it's a meaningful part of a city's ecosystem. And so we shouldn't wait if we're hoping to bring down traffic fatalities by 2030 for automation, because the moment automation has reached a tipping point will probably be when our grandkids are starting to get their driver's license.
Right. All right, look, yeah, very quickly, yeah, go ahead.
So if we take the history of rail, automation has brought a lot of safety improvement. So this is very clear. Now the challenge we have is how we bring at the same time all the capacity that is needed, because we are moving more and more people. And we need then to have higher performance of rail. And automation today brings safety, but also more performance. But at the same time, it has to be also more resilient, and resilient to disruption. And we have discussed about cybersecurity. It's one type of disruption, and you have any other type of disruption. Here, there is a unique opportunity with the automotive industry developing new platform and rail and perhaps aerospace to have some convergence into there. Because we need to have, at the end, very resilient solution to bring the highest level of performance.
Yeah, final word.
Very quick, since talking about autonomy automobile, and I'm talking about flying taxi. And it will be coming in the foreseen near future.
Yep.
In the residential and the city area. So that means for civil aviation and also for the city urban development, that is a new area for all of us. And to see how we should incorporate safety and security. And like you said, resilience of our system. And for aviation, we already started to develop the system. And I hope the cooperation among all the transportation modes can further enhance these efforts and also synergy.
Yep.
Thank you.
I knew this was going to happen. Make it
Just one word
really
on the cross-cutting nature of this issue is arguably, if you want fully automated vehicles to be running on your streets, not just better urban planning, also you need probably 5G wireless broadband. That means a lot of investment. The money is out there, but they're not coming in enough. Only about 10% of proceeds from green bond issuance, for example, is used in transport. That's a figure I got. But also, more needs to be invested not just in digitalization and automated vehicles, but all around you need more investment. This is trillions of dollars, and we need private investment.
All right. Look, just before I let you go, and I thank the speakers, there are three reasons I need to let you go, I'm told. The Minister's tour of the exhibition, the Women in Transport networking reception, and the Stop the Crash demonstration by the Global NCAP. Thank you for a really interesting discussion to all of our panelists. There was so much more we could have talked about, but hopefully we'll pick up on a lot of these ideas that are percolating now over the next few days. And once again, thank you to all of our speakers today. It's been a fabulous session. Thank you very much. To you as well. Thanks. Thank you.